The return is one of the most looked over shots in pickleball. Everybody thinks about dinks, drops, drives, but they never consider the return. But what people don't realize is that if they return with a specific purpose in mind, they can easily set themselves up for a ton more winners and also can make their opponents feel extremely uncomfortable. So let's hop into it, but before we do, make sure that you stick around till the end because I'm going to be sharing the optimal place to hit your return to win more points. Let's open the playbook. So the first return location to talk about is the up the middle return. So I'm back behind the baseline and I return up the middle and then I'm running into the net. There are some pros and some cons to hitting to this spot. Starting with the cons. First of all, whenever you hit up the middle, you always will have a big forehand in the middle. And it's typically a righty player that you're playing against and they'll be on that side of the court, the left side, their respective left side, and they'll come in and they'll smash a forehand. So it can automatically put you in defense because you're running up. And if they drive that ball, you might not quite make it past midcourt by the time that they drive. If they get that ball at your feet, you're probably going to lose that point because they'll come in and just pounce that next shot. So if we don't get enough depth and height on the ball, we're going to be screwed over because as soon as they make contact with that ball, it's going to be at our feet. And then another minor con is the fact that you don't have as much court to work with. What I mean by that is if they serve and their serve comes up the tee, up the middle area, and I hit my next shot up the middle, that's where I have the least amount of court to work with. Whereas if I hit that return, let's say cross court, I have a lot more court to work with that way, as well as cross court that way. So it could cause an error. I could hit the ball deep potentially by going over that spot. Now let's talk about the pros of returning to the middle. So the main pro to returning to the middle, and the one that's most talked about, is the fact that you take away your opponent's angles. So for instance, if my opponent serves at me and I return this shot up the middle, there's a lot of wind today. That was supposed to be up the middle. If I return my shot up the middle, it takes away their ability to hit angles. Because if we're standing at the center of the court, I can really only drop about that wide before it becomes too risky and the ball's probably going to go wide. So basically I'm taking away their angles and their only options become to drop it to us or to drive it directly at us. So this is a great benefit for the returner. Okay, so we've talked about the pros and cons of returning up the middle. Now let's talk about the pros and cons of returning cross court. So starting with the cons for going cross court, first of all, they don't have to change angles of their drop. Their most consistent drop is going to be the cross court drop. So if you hit the ball cross court to them, they now have a lot of court to work with to drop that ball back cross court. So for them, you return the ball across court, they drop. They have a lot more court to work with, whereas the harder drop for them is going to be this drop directly up the line. So if they have to hit this drop, it's going to be a lot less consistent because they're a lot closer to the kitchen. And obviously they want it to get it to land in the kitchen. So the more space that they can create, the better off they are. And then the other con is that it gives them massive angles on the third shot of the rally. So you return cross court, and now their options from that position are to hit down the line. They can also hit up the middle. They can also hit another drop right back to here. They could also hit a drive way back here. Their angles just become massive whenever you return cross court. Is it wrong to return cross court because of the cons, or is it wrong to return up the middle because of the cons of returning up the middle? Absolutely not. It all depends on the specific situation that you're in, and we're going to be covering that after we cover why we return down the line. But first, we need to talk about the pros of returning cross court. The first pro of returning cross court is the fact that you can hit the ball all around harder, just like how we covered before. So it's going to be a harder ball for them to return, while at the same time being an easier ball for me to hit, because if I return up the line, I have a lot less court to work with. Another huge pro to returning cross court is the fact that it opens up the middle. And what I mean by that is, if I return, my return goes cross court like that, it pulls them off the court, and then their partner is going to be right here, okay? So now the middle of the court is completely available. I'm going to be up here, and now my next shot, probably going to be a winner there. This person pulls over, let's say, I can go behind them. I have so many options because I pulled them off the court. But mainly it opens up the middle of the court. So it's going to make their partner that's right here feel like they have to cover that middle shot. So then you just have to watch that partner all while watching the ball and then decide, am I going to go behind the partner here or am I going to go to the middle? And after you've made that decision, just commit to it and then be ready for the ball to come back no matter what, because it tends to in pickleball. The final pro to this, and I'm sure there's tons more that we could cover, but the final main pro to this is the fact that it gives you more time to get up to the net. Since you hit the ball cross court, it's going to take longer for that ball to travel cross court. So then you have more time to come up to the net, which whoever's established at the net is going to be the person that's in charge of the rally. Okay, now let's talk about the third and final return location that you can go to, and that's down the line. So whenever we return down the line, we're going over the highest part of the net. So even though the net is higher there, which is the main con of this, it gets the ball on your opponent quicker, and it also draws the ball to your partner. So let me explain what that means. So if I, for instance, am the returner, I'm standing here, my partner's up at the net, they're both back on the baseline, they hit their serve, I return down the line, that drop here, their most difficult drop to hit, is going to be hitting it back up the line to me. So it's going to automatically draw them to hit that next shot cross court to my partner who's already established, which is a great positive. Since they're already established up on the line, they have lots of control, they're on balance, they can then put that next ball away even if it's slightly high. Whereas I will still be heading up by the time that they make contact with that ball. So it automatically makes this person here want to hit their next shot to the highest percentage shot, which is going to be a drop cross court. Like I said, that ball goes slightly high, it's a put away. If not, then my partner's already established, so it's no worries. So just a brief recap, and then we'll talk about the golden nugget of returning. We return up the middle to take away our opponent's angles and also to cause confusion in the middle. Because you have both players in the middle, I cannot tell you how many times down the middle solves the riddle. Just don't forget that the forehand is in the middle anytime we return up the middle, so that could be a little scary if you leave your return slightly short. Now we return cross court because it opens up the middle and it also allows us to have more court to work with. We have more margin for error on our return whenever it goes cross court. Just don't forget that it gives your opponents huge angles to work with and makes it easy for them to hit a drop because they don't have to change direction. And then returning down the line, it draws the ball to your partner who's already established, which is a huge plus. But don't forget that you're going over the highest part of the net, so it could cause you to make an error. Now let's talk about the golden nugget. And what the golden nugget is that you want to get height on your return so that you can keep your opponents hitting their third shot behind the baseline. Let me explain what I mean. So whenever we hit with height and depth, it causes our opponents to have to make contact behind the baseline. Whenever they're behind the baseline, they're going to be late coming in after their third. So it's going to be a great advantage to us because they're not getting established as quickly as we are. Obviously, as the returner, we're getting up to the net quicker than they are. We want to be up at the net while they're back for as long as possible. We want to keep them back for as long as possible. Obviously, the optimal thing to do is to finish the point. The only way that we can set that up is by putting them into a defensive position. And the way that we keep them in that defensive position is through a deep, high return. The deeper and the higher, the better. So the golden nugget is to hit your return regardless of where you're hitting it, deep and with some height on it, so that it's out of the strike zone of your opponent and makes it so that they have to hit behind the baseline before they can come into the court. That'll make them late coming in and it'll make your fourth shot so much easier. Now, obviously that's easier said than done. What it's gonna come down to is repetition, getting out and getting your reps in. And there's not a better training partner than the Pickleball Drills app. So if you wanna download the app, I will link it right here. And if you'd like to see a review on my ball machine that I use, you can click this video right here and it will tell you everything you need to know. I'll see you on the next one. Peace.